welcome to the show. Now please strap in for the truth and remember the words of the great Tom Cruise.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Now welcome to Off Topic on Porn.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever this may find you, O-Toppers. We're back, and we are ready to rock and roll. I am, of course, one of two hosts here with you. I'm Rob Looper, and I am joined, as always, by my friend and co-host, Russell Cruzan. Russell, how are you doing on this podcast today?
I'm doing well, Rob. Thank you. Nothing at all to complain about. Not that it would do any good, right? As they say.
Well, it just feels like nobody listens when they do. You know what I mean?
They don't.
It's just, people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry. I don't know. So I just kind of figured, why worry about it? Let's just move it along, So it's always fun, but it's always good to be with you, and it's always good to, do the podcast and get it rolling, and kind of, at least get them out there and see how far off topic and yet on point we can stay. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
we're pushing the boundaries. That's what we do. That's what we do here for you, our fans, our listeners, loyal listeners. And by the way, we love you and we thank you for listening. And let's get some business out of the way right up front. If you could like, subscribe, hit that button, share it with a friend, share it with two friends, invite somebody into the OTOP family. If you want to email us, we would love to hear from you at otopnow, OTOPNOW, at gmail.com. We will be happy to hear from you, and we would be happy to respond, and, or leave us a comment. That's always plus a positive, or a review, depending on what platform you're listening on. If you're on Apple Podcast, leave us a review. We'll definitely read it. Or if you're on Spotify, or, leave us a comment. YouTube, leave us a comment. Amazon or iHeartRadio, leave those reviews. We love those, and that helps the algorithm. So
absolutely,
we love you guys, and we love doing this. So, like I said, invite somebody in, share it around, and let's make the OTOP family bigger. How about that? That'll be fun. So, well, we've paid the bills, Russell. So now, now we just got to figure out what we're going to talk about. Hey, we're done. Have a night. No, I joke, I kid. So, it's been like that today.
Making everybody nervous, Rob.
Hey, look, we're on the edge, Russell. We're on topic, and on point. Now they're really scared, right? Because,
Yeah, too much of a sync up there.
So anyway, no, but it's interesting because when we're doing this, the elections, well, minor elections, and I don't want to say minor because nothing's minor, but not the presidential, but there's some minor elections going on, which in the lead up to that, and even with the government shutdown, there's been a lot of rhetoric, and a lot of the left wing rhetoric has been going around, and it's interesting because it's affected Christians. Because Russell, you and I have talked about this, and I know this is something you've been wanting to kind of get into a little bit, and so I'm going to kind of tee it up, and then you can drive it onto the fairway, sir. That is that we've been talking about. There's been this talk that Christian nationalism, okay, so that and patriotism really has become synonymous when the left wing is talking, that rhetoric, their rhetoric really, with fascism, and they even will use the word Nazism. And so I think what we need to do is we need to kind of set the record straight, and let's just break down a little bit what that fascism and Nazism, not as they use it, but what it really is. Because I think we don't need to be scared of those words. I don't think we don't need to kowtow or bow down to that, because I think it's okay to be obviously a Christian, and it's okay to be a patriot, and it's okay to love the country that we live in. So to you, I will cede the floor, and let's break this down and let's go through it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So first of all, that phrase Christian nationalism is like so many of the phrases that we have heard foisted onto the scene the last 10 years or so. It is a contrived term, and there was a predetermined way that it was going to be communicated to essentially attack the Christian church and Christians in particular. Now, we break the phrase down, Christian. We know what a Christian is. We've already pointed out in prior podcasts, there's actually three places in the New Testament where the word Christianos or some variation of it is used, and it always alludes to the fact that there are people who were followers of Jesus that were such good followers, such committed followers that they came to be known as Christians. So Christianos. As a matter of fact, when the scripture says that the disciples were first called Christians at Antioch, it's notice it says that it doesn't just say believers were first called Christians, it says disciples, the disciples, those that were really following Jesus. Those people were first called Christians at Antioch. So the word Christian is really a serious term when it comes to people who follow Jesus. So we know from a New Testament perspective that a Christian is not just someone who believes in Jesus, but actually someone who believes and is a disciple, a serious disciple of Jesus. And that is what a true Christian is anyway. And so the word nationalism has the word nation as the root word.
Right.
Part of what's under assault here is the idea that here in the United States, this is a Christian nation. And we assert that, right?
Yeah.
Christians have asserted that from the beginning. This
Sure.
is it. We're not saying that that the nation itself, you can't take an abstract concept like what a nation is and say, it's saved, it's received the gospel. But you can understand that if the philosophical underpinnings of the founding documents and of the founders themselves comes from a Judeo-Christian ethic, and that is what it came from. That's what they were appealing to. Then you can rightly say that this is a Christian nation, since it's primarily the Christian part of the Judeo-Christian that is referenced. And so this is a Christian nation historically because we have Christian, biblical, Judeo-Christian principles that have informed our legal system, our laws, our founding documents, and it is the primary, by far, the primary, Christianity is the primary faith of this nation from before its founding. So it's just not inconsistent to call this a Christian nation. Now, people want to argue that. We can go back into history. It's very, very easy to prove that what I
Sure.
just said is true.
Right.
So this is partially, subtly an attack on the idea that this is a Christian nation, or at least historically it was. There's been a whole lot of effort to overturn that principle, and we've gotten to a point now where it has been so much overturned that people who are hostile to the Judeo-Christian ethic and to Christians and to the idea that this was essentially a Christian nation, they have gained so much traction that they are now daring to say that this never was a Christian nation, okay? And it's always just secular. And so then we take the concept of Christian nation and we make it a deviant thing. And so Christian nationalism kind of just takes its cues from that. So Christian nationalism, as it has been communicated by certain people on the left,
Sure.
is an idea that, it's something that they foisted, as I said earlier, onto the culture. What we're hearing about today concerning Christian nationalism, it's not a spontaneous discovery. It's actually a freshly minted accusation against us. And, I gave some background on that just now. It's the latest label.
Well, and they're making
really,
that label almost a terror. They've used. We'll get to the fascists and the Jews, the Nazis.
Well, but I mean, yeah.
But they've even used
nationalism and
that.
Christian nationalism. Just because you're using the word nationalism doesn't
Yeah.
mean that there's a correlation. And
No, not at
people
all.
are pretty weak-minded if they're just jumping to that conclusion.
Well, and not only that, but they've actually segregated these nationalist people, and you and I've talked about this, where they've labeled those people and they've almost put those people in a class of they're dangerous to the country, and we had this conversation on a prior podcast. We used the word fundamentalist, but they label all these
Right.
people together as dangerous. Their ideals, their ideology, and they start using the word ideology is dangerous.
Well, I mean, ideology is a legitimate word.
Well, it is,
because
but
everyone subscribes to ideologies.
sure, absolutely,
It's just the word is ideal at the root there, and it's just what ideals do you subscribe to?
sure.
and as they are formulated, that's an ideology.
Yeah. So, but
Um,
they're categorizing,
yeah,
again, people who would espouse the teachings of Jesus, um, and who like, who says we should love our neighbor as ourselves, and all these as dangerous, and at times almost, terroristic, because they there is a line of what is right and what is wrong.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
sorry, but continue, but yeah.
yeah. It's I had a thought that,
I'm
and
sorry.
then it left me. So that's the way it is now, Rob. If
Oh,
if I think of something and don't say it at my age, it
I,
just it's gone and gone forever.
hey, look, you know what? That's just a symptom of either age or ADHD, one of the two.
No, that's
For me,
that's age. It's age in my case.
for me
It
right
doesn't
now, it's
happen.
ADHD. But hey, you know what? I'm quickly approaching where it might be age, and I might not be able to blame ADHD for much longer. You know what I mean? So,
Maybe it'll be a double whammy
hey,
for you
look, that would
eventually.
be awful, but you never know. But
Well,
yeah,
anyway, so the phrase is it's just the latest label. You said
yeah,
label earlier. It's a latest label in a long campaign that is designed to shame Bible believing Christians out of the public square, really, out of
yeah,
the arena of public ideas and expressing ideas therein. Um, if we trace its origins, the origins of the phrase and its ideology and its rhetoric, we find that it's not so much a real movement as much as it's a manufactured category. I alluded to that earlier.
sure,
And it's a phrase that's designed by progressive academics. I have to underscore that progressive academics and activists to discredit ordinary believers who love both God and country. That's the whole point of it.
sure,
That's its purpose. So when people start recoiling from it, when believers, true believers, start recoiling from it, all they're doing is responding the way these people wanted them to respond. That
right,
to start with, that was the whole point.
right,
Now, the term came from. It doesn't come from scripture. Let me just tell you where it doesn't come from. First
sure,
of all, it's not a
right,
scriptural statement. It didn't come from scripture. It doesn't come from church history.
right,
It doesn't even come from any kind of conservative theology, if I can put it that way. It arose sometime in the last decade, especially after probably like 2016, the first Trump administration,
sure.
so when
Well, yeah,
he became president, especially after 2016, and then it was kind of re-empowered after the January 6, 2021 um, event where, you know, the most, according to some, the most horrible event in the history of the United States ever happened,
right,
which is rubbish and bunko, but we're not talking about that, so I won't go on a rabbit trail there.
right,
But the January 6, 2021 event, and there were sociologists like there's a man named Andrew Whitehead and another one
yeah,
named Samuel Perry. People can look them up. They began publishing studies claiming that there was a dangerous blend of Christianity in politics. Now, never mind the fact that we were Christian, as I pointed out earlier, we were Christian, Judeo Christian, philosophically, ethically, in our construct from the very beginning. Never mind that.
right,
There's just this dangerous blend, according to them.
sure,
Now, their work, which was joined later by others like Philip Gorski, Philip Gorski, I always say his name wrong. They frame Christian nationalism as a threat to democracy and pluralism. Now, it may be a threat to pluralism, but it's not a threat to democracy in any way other than I've explained this on a prior podcast. A pure democracy is majority rules, and the tyranny of the majority would be answered by things like a republican form of government and by Christian scripture that tells us to treat the poor and the outcast and the downtrodden a certain way, right?
sure, yeah,
So it really isn't that, but that's what they claim,
yeah,
that it's a threat to democracy and pluralism. But these so-called scholars, they Rob, they largely hail from leftist academic environments. I'm sure that comes as no surprise.
nah, yeah,
And where these are the places, these universities and academic arenas are where secular humanism and progressive social values are assumed as good things. They assume so there's a default assumption that that's the way things ought to be.
Right.
So anything that's not them or that is opposite of them, opposed to them,
Sure.
it's automatically bad. And that's the posture from which they generate this kind of thing.
Well, and
They
they feel like
measure belief. Huh?
well, they feel like also if they say it long enough and they say it loud enough, then it must be true. So they're trying to create their own truth
Right.
by saying it
Right.
long enough and loud enough. And so one of the things that they've started saying, and it's I'll let you kind of define this a little bit as well, is they've started calling everyone who doesn't believe with them like them, but really they've started calling that it's associated with that Christian nationalist a lot is they're fascists. So
Yeah.
do me a favor, jump in a little bit on let's define this. What is a fascist
Okay, well,
first?
hold on before you go there, because I was coming to a
Oh, sorry.
conclusion
Okay, go
on
ahead.
something, and then we can tackle fascist and
Yeah,
fascism. So these guys, they measure beef, and this is important because this is what has happened to the concepts in our country. They measure belief through survey questions that already treat public expressions of faith as suspect. So when surveys are taken,
right,
the questions are asked in such a way as to poison the well, so to speak.
right. Yeah,
Questions like, should America be a Christian nation? Well, implicitly, the tone of that is, well, no, I guess not, because we have all kinds of religions here, right? Or should government promote Christian values?
right,
Well, I got news for you. Every thou shalt not with regard to murder and stealing and
right.
things like that, they
Yeah,
are promoting Christian values. They may
right.
promote other values as well, but that's where we get those values from,
Sure.
is from the
Yeah,
Judeo-Christian biblical ethics. So this approach is a subtle attack on the on our biblical Judeo-Christian values historically. So if you believe then that biblical morality still matters for our national life, you are identified as a Christian nationalist. As I said earlier, they've tainted the concept, they poisoned the well, they've got people thinking as much as they can a
yes,
certain way, and so then they just foist this toxic idea upon Christians and make them guilty of the worst things out there because after all, we're not subscribing to their ideological position. So this is not neutral scholarship, and that's really my ultimate point. Where these guys are concerned, it's not neutral scholarship. This is ideological framing, and so much of academia has been that over the past 50 or more years, easily.
right.
Okay, so you were saying something about
So yeah, listen.
fascism.
I just want to dive in a little bit because you had talked about, or not you, but you and I had talked about this, where they have thrown all sorts of things against the wall to just, you keep in their mind, if you keep saying it and you keep saying it and you keep saying it,
Yeah,
eventually
right,
they're,
which is what I was just talking
yeah,
about.
right, yeah, they're creating their own truth here in a way, or trying to. And
Yeah,
one of the
they're
things,
trying to get people thinking a certain way
right, so that
and
when they hear
assuming
that,
that's
they've
true.
got word association in a way.
Right.
And so one of the things they like to say is anybody, the rhetoric is, well, they're fascist. So, if you're a Christian nationalist, if you're a believer, you're a fascist. If you don't believe like
Yeah.
we do, you're a fascist. And so they keep throwing that word fascist around. So one of the things I want to do, go through, let's define, first of all, what fascism actually is, because that word is thrown around so often it drives me up a wall because they use it. I don't even know that they really know what it means. And if they do, once we define the actual definition, when you tell us, it is so blatantly obvious to me that they don't know what it means. But before we get
Well,
into that part, go.
so are you, if you're wanting a textbook definition, we're going to have to appeal to a textbook or a dictionary.
Well, we can do that, but no,
Um,
I mean, I think
if I just give my own off the top of my head definition, then I'm probably doing the same thing they're doing.
well, and we can
Um,
we can look it up. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but that's
but
just
I will say, if you don't mind looking it up, I'll say this
yeah. Go
while
ahead.
you're doing that.
Yeah,
Um, Fascism was introduced into Nazi Germany as a response to communism. So they didn't want what was happening in Russia to happen in Germany. So they adopted something that went counter to communism. And it did more than just that, obviously, but it was It created a very controlling, autocratic situation where the will of the government, ironically, they were pushing back against a government structure that controlled the people, and the way they responded to it was by setting up a government structure that controlled the people,
Right.
just
Now,
of a different sort. Did you get a
yeah,
definition
I've
there?
got a definition, and I'm gonna actually tailor it a little bit because the reason I'm saying that is in Britain, for example, the left is actually over here, the right. You understand what I'm saying? So their parties are different than ours. So the definition says a far right. Well, I don't know in wherever whether the right is liberal or left or whatever. So I'm gonna leave the left or the right out of it because it
Yeah,
doesn't say
just let's
liberal or progressive. I'm
let's
not
not
gonna
confuse
yeah,
the
let's not
issue. Let's just,
conflate the issue. But it's
yeah.
basically the authoritarian political ideology. And remember the authoritarian part, right?
Yeah.
Authoritarian political ideology characterized by dictatorial power,
Hmm.
extreme nationalism, and the suppression of opposition. It emphasizes the subordination of individual interest to the perceived interest of the nation or a race, often through militarism or regimentation of society and the economy.
Now,
Now,
where are you getting that definition from?
Google,
Okay, so you can pretty much figure that that definition is suspect.
sure.
I mean, unless you're saying you looked it up on Google and there's a source within Google that pulled it up, that Google pulled up, and that's a different source.
Well, it's pulling up Merriam-Webster. I mean, that's what Merriam-Webster says.
Okay, Merriam-Webster, what year?
Um,
Forgive me.
hang on. It's You know what? It's not telling me what year. So I'm assuming it's the most recent
This is
definition.
why I have a collection of paper
Yes,
dictionaries in my library, and I
absolutely.
going all the way back to the 1700s,
Yeah,
because
honestly,
you just cannot trust it. As
right.
soon as this woke stuff came on the scene, and there's a lot of people that just won't like me saying that, and I really don't care,
Man,
to
that's
be
fine.
honest with you, uh, because it is what it is.
Sure,
We tell it like it is here.
sure, absolutely.
There, as soon as that stuff started coming on the scenes, dictionary companies started changing the definition of
Sure.
words. And guess where they changed them? They changed them in the hard copy, sure, but you can't do anything about the old hard copies, but
No,
you can change it online,
no,
and
absolutely.
you can change it to where you can't find the old
No,
definitions, not
absolutely.
very easily.
But even if you look at this definition, Russell, you look at who is suppressing opposition. Who are and when you look at nationalism and the extreme nationalism, who's saying, "Oh, well, these people are a threat to the way that we live." These it's not it's not the right. It's not believers. We're not going out there
No,
saying, "Hey, you're a threat. We don't need to have your ideas out there." I mean, we're saying, "Hey, look, let's not mutilate kids. Hey, that's
right,
probably not a good idea." And there's peaceful stuff, but we're not going out there and you know literally trying to silence people through violence. That's not
yeah,
happening. There's the peaceful exchange of ideas. There's the praying for people. There is the allowing
right.
God to change through
Yeah, so
spiritual awakening and things like that.
let's give a practical example where people can have a visual. So
Sure,
let's go back to Nazi Germany.
sure,
The brown shirts. The brown
yes,
shirts were the young people that were sent out to stir up trouble,
yep,
much like Antifa or
yeah.
Antifa, however you want to say it
However,
today.
right,
And you can find a similar parallel on the left in this country
yes,
to the things that were done pre, well, in the early days of Nazi Germany. I'll just say
sure,
that. That helped set the fascist regime up to do what it did. So, who's really practicing fascism in
right.
this country when you compare it to demonstrable historical examples?
And that's to me what's interesting is a lot of times what I see happening is and I do this in my own life. I try to look and say, hey, when I start hollering about what somebody else is doing, am I
Yeah,
really, you know, I try to look at my own life and go, maybe it's something about me that I'm identifying and I'm seeing that I don't like. And it seems like a lot of times the left starts screaming about something because they're doing it, and if I can get you to focus on them, you're not going to see me doing it.
Yeah.
And what we seem to, find and is, I'll go back to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was having discussions. He was
So,
he was
so are we
giving
still
people
defining fascism?
we're giving examples of
Because this
how
is
we're
the long
not.
definition, brother.
Oh, no. We're not defining it. Now we're showing how really and truly, in my opinion, the right is not in any way fascist. It is more
No, yeah.
it is more, honestly, it would be the left, because and to me, one of the greatest examples of this was Charlie Kirk. Kirk gave people an open microphone. He didn't turn it off. Even when they were rude to him, he didn't turn it
Yeah.
off. He would have a civil discourse with
Right.
people who he knew disagreed, and he would
Right.
ask them questions. He would talk. He would listen, and he would have a fair discourse with them. And sometimes he would say, "You know what? I don't know. I didn't know about that. Let me go research it." He didn't just have talking points and
Yeah.
then shut them down. He would have an actual conversation. And he asked this question at one point, and he said, where on the left is this happening? Because it's not. Nobody on the left is having these discussions and saying, okay, bring us your talking points. And you know what? You have the legitimate opportunity to prove me wrong. Nobody does that. All it
Well,
is you can't
but
talk
here's the
about that.
thing.
You're being ugly. You're being rude. And then all the name calling
Yeah.
comes out: misogynist, fascist,
But see, here's the thing.
whatever.
You cannot expect the people who concocted the phrase Christian nationalism
Sure.
to see it from the perspective that you're explaining it. The perspective from which you're explaining it is correct because it is fair and
Right.
it tries to give deference to everybody. But remember, they don't like Charlie Kirk. They don't like what he stands for. So when somebody that they don't like is being fair, they still count it as unfair because he is supposed to shut up or be silenced.
Right.
And the people that are taking him on, they're the ones we are all supposed to listen to.
Yeah. No, and you're
Now
right.
that is fascism. That whole idea there is fascism. And if you don't shut up, we will shut you up.
Sure.
And then when the government gets involved in this, they start arresting you. People start disappearing
Right.
out of families. People that are targeted, if they're hidden, then the
Yeah.
people hiding them become also culpable and guilty in that fascist regime.
Yeah.
And this idea that that's what Donald Trump is trying to do is so unbelievably moronic. It's willful ignorance.
Sure.
People who embrace it, well, first of all, there are the people who are generating the rhetoric,
Sure.
and they're just deceptive. They're just evil
Yeah.
people. They are trying to influence things that aren't true in a direction that will give them control and will benefit them. And then there's the useful idiots out there,
Right. Who propagate
which
it?
is a communistic term, a
Yeah.
Marxist term. The useful idiots out there who just gullibly embrace it because they're, as we said before, rooting for their football team. And it
Yep.
doesn't really matter what you explain to them. So back to Charlie Kirk. For a lot of these people, it didn't matter what he explained. They just were programmed that they
Yeah.
were not going to like what he said and we're not going to like him. And it doesn't matter what the truth is. Everybody says that they are a person of truth. Everybody professes
sure.
that.
Well, and what I
But
think
the
is,
only way to know if somebody is for you to be fair-minded and then
Yeah.
for you to take an objectivity to what they're saying. And almost nobody actually does that, including these academics who make the appeal to fairness and
well,
a
yeah, because
non-biased
they're
approach.
smarter than all of us. But yeah, and it's
Well, so
interesting.
yeah, according to them.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, and I think it's interesting that, I know Nancy Pelosi, one of our favorite people, um,
Yeah,
is getting a lot of backlash right now because her rhetoric and the rhetoric is just, it amplifies. We can't say, it's simply not enough anymore to say I disagree. Now she's getting backlash because she just called President Trump the most vile human being and the worst thing on the face of the earth or something. I mean,
yeah,
just the rhetoric just amps up. I mean, and if, when the tables are turned, every
yeah,
and we're guilty of doing it because I'm doing it right now. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, hey, that's we're ramping it up. I think everybody, I don't care who it is, needs to ratchet it down. Let's just talk and say, hey, look, you know what? I really don't agree with the guy. I can deal with that.
I mean, we can do that, but I got to point out something. Jesus himself said, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you compass land and sea to make one proselyte, and you make him, when you convert him, you make him twofold, twice the child of hell as yourselves. You snakes, you brood of vipers! How shall you escape the damnation of hell?"
Sure.
Now that's just one quote.
No. Hey, and when
And so
yeah,
there are times
sure.
when the ramped up rhetoric is actually quite appropriate.
Yeah. And I think that, and to me, when I look at that, when he says that, we're talking about people's souls and we're talking about this. Now, politics, don't get me wrong. I mean,
We're always talking about people's souls, though, because what people embrace that keeps them from the gospel.
Oh, that's true. But
see, so I mean, we can't sever politics. I know so many in the church try to do that. No, you cannot do that.
True.
Politics is one of the outward philosophical expressions of the human condition, and it
Sure.
comes from human beings, right?
No, well, and I
so-
agree. Yeah, and
so it's like if somebody is embracing an ideology politically that
Yeah.
stops them, that blinds them, that keeps them from receiving the truth of God, it does become theological.
It does.
is theological. In
Sure.
fact, I would say it starts off there.
right. And to me, when we can't even have a conversation without just continuing to try and one up each other on who's, it's like that whole thing of, you're the worst. No, you're the worst. And now we're going to go, okay, now I got to get a better thing to denigrate you. Look, how about this? I don't agree. So that's where we are. But now that's not enough. Now we've got to somehow, we've got to roast. And so we've got to make the fire hotter.
Yeah.
And so we've got to say things that are further and further and further and further and further and further and further.
But
it just,
Rob, if you're dealing with two fair-minded people or factions, that's entirely possible. But that's not what we have.
no,
here.
you're right. And it's on either side. It's just,
No,
so.
I mean, no, it's not. It's not equal on either side.
No,
no. It's not the case that leftist ideology is evil, but then we have evil on the right, so we're just
No, that's not what I'm
So
saying. No, it just
no, it's not. That's not how it is.
No, that's not what I'm. It's what it's the what happens is I feel like for a long time there was this mud was coming one way and everybody's like, well, we're a little bit above that, and then all of a sudden everybody started going, no, okay, now we're not. Now we're going to say, okay, that's enough. And then it just ramped higher because they're like, well, you can't not take it. So now you're going to have to take it more. You know what I'm saying? And it's
but if people are shooting at you eventually, despite your appeals, you may have to shoot back.
It's just gotten so.
Now, I will say this on the right, we've got some really, I'll use the word interesting, although that's not what I really mean, but there is a interesting phenomena that has come about through some people we've talked about before.
Sure.
Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and some others. They are taking some very disturbing positions on some things that are they're just manifestly wrong in those positions, but they are helping to deconstruct what would otherwise be a pretty fair political right, if I can put it that way. And that's probably a little bit outside the bounds of what we're talking about here.
Sure.
But just, to what you're saying, there are factions within on the right. But I would say that these two people I just named, while professing to be Christians, they are manifestly speaking as people who they're not only not Christian, they don't seem to understand what the Bible actually says, even though they would try to tell you that they do. So there's another wrinkle there. There is a deception. There's a fake Christianity that is helping with the deception out there.
Yeah. So it's like I said, it's just one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we talked about tonight is just letting everybody understand. Hey,
well, I don't think that we have actually delved into what Christian nationalism. I don't think we've exhausted it. It's
no. I'm just saying I want to make sure one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that we identify what they're saying it is, and kind of go into kind of what fascism is, and then say, okay, here's what it really is. So in a way, I think Christian nationalism, it's believers who care about the direction of this country, truly, who are proud to be Americans. They're thankful to the Lord for where they were born
Yes.
and where they grew
Christian
up, and
patriots.
Christian patriots who truly love the Lord, and then say, hey, you know what? This was a nation that was founded by a bunch of really smart guys, by the way, who most of them were, well, all of them. I mean, so there was different levels of let's say belief in the sense of where they were with the Lord. But again, you can look at the Constitution, and you and I have talked about this. God is all over the Constitution.
Yeah.
They would, and George Washington was quite the pillar of faith, and so I think as we look and as we talk about Christian nationalism really is, I don't think, anything to be ashamed of. It's something to be. What you're saying is, I care about where this country's going, and I care about, first and foremost, my relationship with the Lord, and then I care about making sure that we're steering this country that He's allowed us to have in a
Yeah.
direction that He'd want it to go, and not by in any way other than through prayer, through making our voices heard, through propagating and spreading the gospel, in a way that He would want, and I think that's really, to me, when you think about Christian nationalism, that's what Christian nationalism is.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't like that either. But remember, I'm not going to embrace the phrase, because the phrase is contrived, and it's
Sure.
contrived by leftists, and it's propagated by leftists for for the express purpose of discrediting the Christian church.
Yeah.
It's a new the new label, Rob, it works rhetorically because it plays on fear.
Right.
It allows critics uh, of Christianity to say, well, we're not really attacking Christianity, just Christian nationalism, but the effect is the same.
Sure.
Christian, public Christianity is vilified by them,
Yeah.
and by secular progressivism, and it becomes, um, and thereby secular progressivism, if people embrace this, becomes the only quote unquote safe worldview that people can embrace. Because you don't want to, you can't trust these Christian nationalists. By extension, all Christians are Christian nationalists unless they're leftist progressive Christians. It's a straw man fallacy.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it builds the caricature up of what we are,
Sure.
and then it knocks it down. And they didn't really knock down the real thing. They knocked down, after presenting it publicly, the straw man that they compiled that
Right.
wasn't the
Yeah.
real thing. It's also, speaking of fallacies, it's also a poisoning of the well. Um, it's a poisoning the well brand biblical. They brand biblical conviction as extremism before the conversation even begins, so that when we get into the conversation, that people are already, oh, you're one of those Christian nationalists. No, I never said that. You said that.
Sure.
But they've already got people thinking that way.
Yeah. They've already attached the label.
Yeah, if I could give a little bit of history here, I've got some history I'm pulling up here that I'd prepared before coming on here tonight. I think we already said this didn't just start yesterday, right?
Right.
It's part of a cultural project that's been running for over 100 years, and it's really with a pretext to detach America from her Judeo-Christian moral roots. In the early 20th century, progressive educators like John Dewey and others, and historians like Charles Beard, argued that moral instruction should come from the civic reason, not from divine revelation. That was the first thing. So it was a move towards secularism in the educational halls. Mid-century of the 20th century, theological liberals redefined Christianity as social reform rather than redemption, which is what you were just alluding to.
Right.
So it's not so it's social reform, and what we do in society, that's the real Christianity. Now, post 1960s, neo-Marxist and postmodern thinkers like Gramsci and Foucault and others taught that traditional religion, family, and patriotism are tools of oppression. That's what they started teaching.
Okay.
And by the time we get up to 1980, from 1980 to now, which is where you and I function a lot,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Of
Right.
course, I go back to the 1960s, but yeah.
Sure.
Uh, Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States, reframed the American story as one long tale of systemic injustice, leaving little room for gratitude or for divine providence. Each generation coined a new label to marginalize conviction. And so here we go: fundamentalist, the religious right,
Right.
dominionist, and now Christian nationalist. All these
Sure.
phrases here. Different vocabulary, same strategy.
Sure. Yeah.
Turn faithfulness into fanaticism. And that's what they tried to do and are trying to do conceptually. Now, I mentioned this last podcast, I believe. In the early 1900s, believers like R.A. Torrey and A.C. Dixon published The Fundamentals, a testimony to the truth financed by the Stewart brothers. And they were a series of 12 booklets written between 1910 and 1915 that reaffirmed five essential doctrines that all Christians believe. And that would be one, the divine inspiration and inerrancy of the scripture. Number two, the virgin birth and full deity of the Messiah. Number three, the substitutionary atonement. Number four, the bodily resurrection and literal return of the Messiah. And five, the necessity of personal regeneration. They weren't fighting culture wars, Rob. They were preserving biblical truth across denominations.
Yeah.
The term fundamentalist originally meant faithful defenders of the gospel. Only later did secular journalists and modernists, theologians, twist it into an insult. The same linguistic sleight of hand is now being repeated with the phrase Christian nationalism. So I thought that was a really good commentary there
Yeah.
on where this stuff actually started and what's under attack and assault here. The philosophical subtext is a battle of worldviews.
Yeah.
We have biblical classical truth, which is objective and revealed by God, law that is expressed by divine and that expresses divine morality, and freedom, which requires virtue, and that is assaulted by secular progressivism, which says truth is relative, it is socially constructed, law enforces evolving consensus, and that's legal positivism, and then freedom is license from restraint. So you just do what you want to do, except for
Right.
those of you who are doing Christianity, and we don't want you doing that, so we'll say you can't do that.
Right.
But we can do every deviant thing we want to. That's where this winds up.
Yep.
When Christians assert God's moral order, progressives interpret it as a power grab. Hence the accusation again, Christian nationalism.
Sure.
Let me give you some scripture here real quick, if I could, Rob.
Yep.
Jeremiah 29:7. Seek the peace of the city, it says. This is a part of the Christian ethic and the
Yeah.
Jewish ethic, Judeo-Christian
Absolutely.
ethic.
Yeah.
And pray unto the Lord for it.
Yeah.
That's an imperative.
Absolutely.
How about Matthew 22:21? Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. This is right from the mouth of Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's not saying that we should be against the government.
Right.
In fact, we're supposed to render to Caesar. So in our context, render unto the United States government the things that are rightly the United States government's. This
Sure.
is a Christian ethic. It's a
Yeah.
Judeo-Christian ethic. Romans 13:1-7. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just say that in those seven verses, civil government is ordained of God, and yet its authority is limited also by God. So
Yeah.
there's not carte blanche from a Christian perspective.
Sure.
There's not a carte blanche power that the government has, but the secularist wants unlimited power. And they want it, especially if they're the ones that sit in the halls of government.
Absolutely. Yeah.
1 Timothy 2:1-4. Pray for all who are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life.
Yeah. There
We
you go.
really need that today.
We really do.
Philippians-
Yeah.
Philippians 3:20. Our citizenship is in heaven. We have to remember that as believers. In Revelation 13, again, I won't read the whole chapter, but beware of the state that demands that you worship it.
Yeah.
We see a picture of that in Revelation
Yeah,
chapter
we do.
13. Together, these passages teach us to love our nation under God's sovereignty, but never above God's sovereignty. We must obey God rather than men. Now, if I were to look at this through a Messianic Jewish lens, because I am a part of such a congregation,
Yep.
Messianic believers understand this tension very well, Rob.
Yeah.
And you're one yourself, right?
Absolutely.
You're a Messianic Jew.
Yep.
So throughout history, both church and state have accused the faithful remnant of sedition simply for obeying God. In the first century, as you know, believers in Yeshua were called a sect and accused of turning the world upside down, Acts 17:6.
Yep.
The prophets of Israel faced the same charge whenever they confronted kings with God's word. Our task then is to love our country as Jeremiah did, by seeking its peace, its shalom, praying for its leaders, and calling it back to righteousness, not by enthroning it as an idol, which is what people who call us Christian nationalists and want to enshrine a secularist ideal in the government. This is what they want ultimately. The government is the final authority. The government is God. Therefore, the government is an idol. So, I mean, I could say a whole lot more.
Oh,
but I hope that helps communicate some of the ideas here, not only of what Christian nationalism is and where it came from, but what is really true about the Bible-believing Christian and what is fake about what they're saying concerning us.
And what we're really supposed to do as well. So it gives direction as well. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So it's not just what it is or what it isn't, but what we're supposed to do. You know.
So and what we're supposed to do, if I could put it this way, Christians can and should love their nation precisely because we love our neighbor.
Yep.
What is our nation? But a collection of our neighbors all in one national context.
Absolutely.
I'm not one that's real big on quoting St. Augustine, but he taught that love becomes disordered only when we love the lesser above the greater.
Right.
To love America rightly is to desire her repentance, her justice, and her peace under God, not to worship her flag and not to worship her politics.
Right.
No matter what side of the aisle somebody might be on.
Agreed.
So the phrase Christian nationalism is the new cudgel in an old fight.
Yeah.
A century ago, faithful believers were called fundamentalists, as I pointed out a while ago, for holding to Scripture, right, and to its inspiration.
Yeah.
Today, they're called Christian nationalists, or we're called Christian nationalists, for believing that faith should still shape moral life. But the Bible calls us something else entirely. The Bible calls us, Rob, ambassadors of Messiah.
Yep.
Citizens of heaven who seek the peace of our earthly home. We seek the shalom of God here on the earth.
Yep.
So we should never fear labels, Rob.
Never.
Nope. We should fear being unfaithful to the God who made us and saved us. History's pendulum swings, but God's truth always stands firm.
Yep. So, well, we have gone. Well, that's not too long. Yeah, it's all right. We're good. You know what? It's fun.
I felt like I need to get that out.
No, we're good.
If it was too long.
No, you're fine. Let's pay the bills here real quick.
Okay.
You know how we love mountain mowers, Russell. So, one of our sponsors here on Off Topic On Point is Mountain Mowers LLC. So, if you're in the Tri-Counties area, they are your local experts for keeping your yard looking its best. Whether it's mowing, trimming, or full lawn care, Mountain Mowers has you covered with reliable service and a personal touch. They know every yard is different, and they treat yours like their own. If you're ready for a lawn that stands out without all the hassle, call Mountain Mowers LLC today, 276-730-8230. Mountain Mowers, they cut grass, not corners, and we love Mountain Mowers. Give them a call. So, Russell, I think that'll do it for this week.
Thank you for
as always, it's been good. Love being on here with you. Love talking. And as always, for all of our OTOP family, we want to remind you: you don't have to be off. You don't have to be on topic. You can be off topic. But remember, you must stay on point. We love you guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one.
Bye bye.